So news just broke that Brian Kohberger in the Idaho 4 case has taken a plea deal. He is going to change his plea to guilty in exchange for a life in prison without parole sentence, and the state will no longer pursue the death penalty against him. At least one of the families is not happy with this decision. Kaylee's family wrote this on Facebook after the news broke. But I have to say, as a person who worked to overturn the death penalty for a number of years, I helped overturn it in 3 states in 3 years. The vast majority of advocates I had working with me were victims' family members who started out wanting the death penalty and then went through the horror of the process, and after a period of years, sometimes decades, changed their minds and turned against the system even existing. The reality is the likelihood Brian Kohberger was going to get the death penalty was always drastically low. I don't care what their evidence was. We know this statistically. Juries do not like death penalty verdicts. They don't want that on their hands in case they're wrong. And once life without parole was implemented across the country, they go for that more times than not. So death penalty cases end up being kind of a charade. They're just security theater to make you think the state's being tough on crime. They spend about $1 million more per case just to have the trial, whether or not the jury votes guilty or not, or gives a death penalty or a sentence or not. Just to have the trial, they spend about $1 million more than what you would pay as taxpayers for an LWOP case. And again, it doesn't even usually end up happening. And even if you do get a death penalty sentence, the likelihood that it's carried out is even lower because the mechanisms by which to do so are drying up and the appellate process takes a long time. Thank God, because we know 1 out of 8 people on death row has been exonerated. I'm sorry, not 1 out of 8 people on death row. 1 out of every 8 executions that we've had in this country has ended up being exonerated. So ultimately, the state just got a much more secure verdict for these families. He will be in prison with no chance of appeal for the rest of his life. They save taxpayers at least $1 million, probably a whole lot more for this size case. And they've saved the families the horror of having to go through the trial, hear the gruesome details lived out over and over, plus decades of the appellate process being dragged back into court to relive the worst thing that's ever happened to them over and over and over, thus actually preventing closure. As somebody who has followed this case obsessively, I am disappointed that we as the public probably will now not get a lot of answers and information that we would have gotten had this gone to trial. But ultimately, this is a huge win for the state and for the families.